The silence of space held its breath. Beyond the shattered moons and derelict hulls of the Lyri expanse, 12 Terran warships waited, black as the void, motionless in stealth formation. They were ghosts, cloaked behind layers of EM camouflage and gravitational null sheaths. Not even light could touch their hulls. Commander Elena Voss stood on the command deck of the TSV Valiant, hands clasped behind her back, her posture relaxed but eyes sharp. Before her, the holosphere flickered with faint echoes of movement, gravitational signatures edging into the system. "They're here," said Lieutenant Hale, scanning telemetry. "Zarkith Strike Fleet. 9 vessels. 2 capital class." "Estimated arrival vector?" Elena asked. "Warp drop in 32 seconds. Relativistic exit burn puts them directly above Relay Theta." "Just where we want them," she murmured. The Lyri expanse had once been a galactic graveyard. Now it was bait. A carefully constructed snare positioned around a wormhole relay the Zarkith desperately wanted. And they had come, just as intelligence predicted. Arrogant, overconfident, unchallenged. "Confirm cloak integrity," Elena ordered. "All ships silent. Fleet profile minimal." Hale paused. "We're invisible." Elena allowed herself a thin smile. Let them think humanity was still crawling behind Mars. Let them believe Earth had no bite. Today those illusions would die. The bridge lighting dimmed slightly as the holosphere expanded, showing the enemy fleet blinking into real space like thunderclaps without sound. The Zarkith ships were monstrous, curved like scythes, obsidian hulls crackling with ion fields. Beautiful in the way hurricanes were. Karathzul's fleet. Her thoughts drifted briefly to her last conversation with Fleet Admiral Sandoval on Earth. "You don't need to start a war," he'd warned. "No," Elena had replied. "But I can end a mistake." She returned to the present as the Zarkith ships began broadcasting. A guttural, grinding voice echoed through wideband. "This sector is now under Dominion control. All vessels will power down and prepare for boarding." Lieutenant Hale chuckled under his breath. "So polite." "Let them see us," Elena said. A heartbeat later, the Terran warships decloaked. Like phantoms solidifying into nightmares, the 12 vessels shimmered into view. Sleek, triangular profiles. Hulls laced with shimmering ablative fiber. No flickering lights. Just cold, unblinking steel. Gasps filled the Zarkith comms. Scanners scrambled. Targeting arrays overloaded. The Dominion hadn't expected resistance. Certainly not this. Elena tapped her comlink. "To all Zarkith vessels. You have trespassed into neutral territory and approached a protected relay under Terran watch. Stand down and retreat." Silence. Then, "Karathzul. I am Supreme Strategos Karathzul of the 9th Expansion Armada. I do not answer to apes dressed in stolen steel." Elena tilted her head slightly. "Not stolen. Designed." Karatha's voice returned, thick with disdain. "Your kind hides behind new toys. It will not save you. We will shatter your constructs and erase your presence." She muted the channel. "Posturing," she said. "Typical Dominion doctrine. Arrogance first, questions never." On cue, the Zarkith ships activated weapon grids. Battle formations. Execute delta shift. Nix, pulse drain their forward sensors. The AI aboard Valiant responded instantly. Drain initiated. Target vessels blinded. Across the void, the Zarkith ships twitched. Their targeting relays flickered. For 3 seconds, eternity in fleet time, they were blind. Terran ships moved. Fast. Precise. Surgical. The TSV Seraph and TSV Revenant swept from above, each releasing a staggered barrage of compression lances. Twin Dominion cruisers took direct hits, armor collapsing inward like crushed glass. No explosions, just sudden implosions, followed by silence. The Zarkith formation fractured. Karathzul, for all his pride, responded with calculated fury. "Multiple cruisers spooling up for wide-arc plasma volleys," Hale reported. "Break grid," Elena ordered. "Stagger pattern. Minimize overlap." Terran ships peeled apart, weaving through debris and gravitational eddies with inhuman grace. The Dominion fired, wide, erratic, desperate. Plasma blooms filled space with searing light, but no Terran hulls burned. "Contact from Dominion flagship," the comms officer said. "Audio only." "Patch it." Caratha's voice returned, lower now, less performative. "You are not what I expected." Elena allowed herself a pause. "We usually aren't. You'll die regardless. Then make the attempt." She cut the line. The Dominion fleet began to regroup. Engines flared. Ion trails curled like wounded smoke. Elena paced toward the central display. "We gave them a warning. They chose arrogance." Nick spoke again. 3 remaining cruisers repositioning. Flagship repositioning behind asteroid cluster. Attempting a flanking vector. "Good," Elena said. "Let them come closer." A pulse of movement flickered across the holosphere, another Terran vessel joining formation. The TSV Eclipse had just arrived, fresh from shadow space, its kinetic battery humming with quiet menace. "We hold position," Elena ordered. "Let them spend themselves." For a moment, all was still again. Only wreckage and ambition drifting through silence. Then the enemy moved, fast and angry. Carath sent 3 ships into a tight assault wedge, aiming to break the Terran line. "They're committing," Hale said. "Hard burn." "Perfect," Elena murmured. "Release the net." Invisible torpedoes detonated in a lattice pattern. They weren't explosives, they were gravitic disruptors, seeded hours ago. Space twisted. Trajectories bent. The Zarkith ships veered off course, spiraling into overlapping fire zones. Terran cannons lit up, surgical beams slicing through hulls before the enemy could recover. One Zarkith destroyer broke apart mid-turn. Another tried to escape and slammed into a debris cloud rigged with kinetic mines. Within 30 seconds, the enemy advance dissolved. Carathzul didn't speak again. But Elena didn't need words. The silence told her everything. She turned to her crew. "Pull us back 10 clicks. Begin recovery. Reload and reset." "What's next?" Hale asked. Elena studied the flickering remnants of the enemy fleet. "Next," she said, "we remind them what happens when you ignore the quiet ones." The Dominion fleet reeled, and yet it did not retreat. Commander Elena Voss stood anchored in silence, watching the dance unfold on the holosphere. Red sigils flared, enemy positions. Blue arcs swept through space. Terran maneuvers. Every shift, every flicker of motion was captured, dissected, and recalculated in real time by Nyx, the ship's AI, whose voice hummed softly in Elena's earpiece. Dominion flagship repositioning behind asteroid cluster 7. Suggest trajectory intercept from Revenant and Eclipse to flank. "Confirmed," Elena replied. "Initiate predictive burn pattern and fire on next heading." From the shadows of the debris field, TSV Revenant glided like a blade, no engine flare, no exposed heat. It fired once, silent, invisible, then vanished behind a curtain of radiation haze. A moment later, one of Caratha's escort frigates folded inward, ruptured from within. No shock waves. Just erasure. Carathzul was learning. Slowly. "Multiple hostiles shifting formation," said Hale, squinting at the feed. "He's abandoning the spearhead wedge. Switching to radial defense." Elena's brow lifted slightly. "He finally realized we don't fight like them." The Zarkith were masters of brute engagement. Fleet mass, shock, and overwhelming firepower. Their doctrine was centuries old. Break formation, crush resistance, occupy. Efficient against weaker races. But humanity hadn't climbed the stars by matching brawn with brawn. They had rewritten the rules instead. "Nyx," Elena said. "Initiate ripline simulation. Let's see if they've adapted." Simulation green. Launch path plotted. Projected enemy evasion, 9%. She nodded. "Launch." Across the battlefield, 4 Terran drones detached from Valiant, small and unassuming. They didn't fire. They didn't need to. They each carried one singularity core, a weapon that tore local gravity into unpredictable knots. Perfect for disrupting ships that relied on rigid maneuvering. Within seconds, a Zarkith destroyer veered to avoid what it thought was a standard missile. It drifted into a blind pocket. Its companion ship tried to correct, but the rip line triggered mid-turn, warping space and folding both vessels into a tangled spin. 2 more kills. Clean. Clinical. Elena exhaled through her nose. Report. 6 Zarkith ships remain, said Hale. Flagship intact, but shield harmonics degraded. They're scattering. No clear formation. A voice buzzed through the comms. Lieutenant Soraya from the TSV Eclipse. Commander, we've intercepted internal chatter. Dominion fleet is requesting reinforcements from a nearby outpost in the Karsus Belt. ETA for backup. 20 minutes. Elena's jaw set. That wasn't unexpected, but it forced her hand. Do we engage the flagship now? Hale asked. No, she said. Not yet. She walked slowly to the central command ring. Her fingertips grazed its edge as she thought. The moment Kareth arrived, he believed he was entitled to victory. Every decision since had been made under that illusion. She wanted that belief crushed slowly. Thoroughly. She tapped the console. Broadcast to Zarkith fleet. Open channel. The bridge fell still. Zarkith vessels. You have been outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outclassed. Your reinforcements will arrive too late. The next wave of fire will not spare your cores. Withdraw now. Save what's left. The message echoed for 5 seconds. Then came the reply. Kareth himself. Cowardice drips from every syllable, he growled. You veil your weapons in shadows. You refuse honorable combat. You speak of superiority while hiding behind machines. Elena answered without emotion. Victory does not ask for your approval. She closed the channel. Prepare next volley. Focus fire on their comms array, she ordered. Cut off their link to reinforcements. Across the void, the Terran ships adjusted as one. The TSV Horizon, a long-range artillery carrier, unfolded its forward deck like a flower blooming in vacuum. From within, its arc railguns charged silently, tapping antimatter coils. The soundless strike that followed wasn't visible to the naked eye, but the results were. The Zarkith flagship's comm spire erupted in a blossom of molten fragments. Direct hit, said Nyx. Comms down. Signal scatter across all enemy nodes. Karatha's image briefly flickered on the feed, then vanished. But even without orders, the Dominion ships fought on, more desperate now. Their formations became erratic, driven by isolated captains clinging to doctrine. They charged in staggered, messy lines, weapons blazing wide, forcing engagements. Elena gave no grand speech, no rallying cry. Just, engage. The Terran fleet responded like a single living organism. Evasive patterns. Multi-vector intercepts. EMP webs. Rail precision fire. And Nyx, calculating 1,000 predictions a second, whispered them all into Elena's ear. A Zarkith frigate launched torpedoes. Seraph caught them mid-flight with microflak bursts, then counterburned hard to deliver a crippling burst to its reactor. Another enemy corvette tried to blindside the Valiant, only to find itself staring into the forward lance array of Eclipse. The Dominion had never seen combat like this. And Kareth, wherever he was running out of options. Elena, Nyx spoke, more softly now. Recommend containment. They're breaking. She nodded once. Target drives. Disable. Don't destroy. Let them drift. Let them carry the story home. The orders went out. In under 4 minutes, 5 of the remaining Zarkith ships were immobilized, venting plasma and adrift, alive, but humiliated. The 6th, Karatha's flagship, still lurked, silent, behind the asteroid ridge. Elena stared at its blinking echo. He's not leaving, Hale said quietly. No, she said. He wants to understand what just happened before he dies. The battlefield hung in eerie stillness. Charred wreckage drifted lazily between the shattered asteroids. Half a dozen Dominion vessels floated powerless, stripped of mobility, bleeding energy. And behind it all, the hulking silhouette of Karathal's flagship clung to the shadows, wounded but defiant. Commander Elena Voss watched from her place on the Valiant's bridge, arms folded, face unreadable. He's not running, Hale muttered beside her. He can't, she said. Not after this. Not without a reason to survive. The Dominion commander had seen his fleet cut down in under an hour. His pride was bleeding out alongside his engines. But Elena knew men like Kareth. They didn't flee, they endured, trying to solve the puzzle that beat them. And she had one final move to make before the board flipped. "Status on our forward trap grid?" she asked. "Gravitic distorters are armed," said Nyx. "Field is stable and masked. Ready on your command." "Good," Elena replied. "Now we wait." She turned from the holosphere and moved to her private console, inputting an encrypted channel. The image of Admiral Sandoval blinked to life, stoic, gray-eyed, a war veteran made of protocol. "Elena," he said immediately. "We're monitoring the engagement. Is the relay secure?" "Secured. Enemy reinforcements were denied comms. We intercepted the request before it left their grid." "Dominion will retaliate eventually," he warned. "I know," she replied. "But when they come next, they'll remember this." Sandoval leaned forward. "And your losses?" "Zero," she said. "No casualties. Minimal armor degradation. We caught them flat-footed." His eyes flickered with something like admiration. "You just changed our place in the galaxy." "No, sir. I reminded them we have one." The screen dimmed. The channel closed. Elena exhaled and turned back to the bridge. "Enemy flagships moving," Hale announced. Kareth's vessel was shifting slowly from behind the asteroid ridge, hull glimmering with scorched plating. It edged forward, not to flee, but to test the waters. "He's going to probe our flank," said Nyx. "Path is threading between mines and netlines. He's trying to map the trap." "He'll try to draw fire," Elena said. "And if we shoot, he'll know where we're blind." She paused. "Let him pass." Hale glanced over. "Ma'am, let him come through the first breach. Then snap the net." They waited. No one spoke. The Dominion flagship inched forward, grazing the edge of the gravitic field. Nothing triggered. Confidence, or desperation, carried him farther. The hull drifted into a narrow corridor, just wide enough for a ship of its size. "Now," Elena said. Invisible currents shifted. The mast disruptors flared to life, and suddenly space twisted like cloth yanked from both ends. The Dominion flagship's engines pulsed violently in response, struggling to stabilize. "Engines misaligned," reported Nyx. "They've entered the distortion fold. Firing solution ready." "Not yet," Elena said. "Send in Nyx. Let's have a conversation." A pause, then. "Acknowledged. Transferring partial control." Valiant's dorsal hangar cracked open. Out came Nyx, not just the AI, but its physical avatar, a jet-black Corvette-class vessel forged for speed, stealth, and surgical strikes. It moved like a shadow unbound by physics, silent and graceful, looping wide and then angling toward Kareth's flagship. "Opening comms," said Hale. "He's accepting." Kareth's voice came through, quieter this time. "You didn't destroy us," he said. "You're not worth the power draw," Elena replied coldly. A pause. "You fight like machines." "No," she said. "We fight like humans who spent 2 centuries studying empires like yours. Who learned what not to become." Kareth's tone grew bitter. "You baited us. We tested you," she said. "You failed." The line crackled. "You hide behind code, technology, illusion." Elena's voice was razor-sharp now. "We fight smart because we can't afford to fight stupid. You were bred in triumph. We evolved in extinction." He didn't respond. That silence told her more than words would. "I should kill you," Elena said softly. "But I want you alive." "For what?" Kareth snapped. "To watch," she said. "To witness how far below us you've fallen." At that, she gave the signal. Nyx fired, not to destroy, but to cripple. A concentrated EMP burst lanced into the Zarkith flagship's dorsal array. The vessel's lights flickered. Systems cascaded offline. "They're blind," Nyx reported. "Weapons disabled. Power grid failing. Reactor stable." Elena ended the transmission. "Send recovery drones. Tag their ship as neutralized." Then she turned to her crew. This war won't be decided today, she said. But when the Concord looks at the battle logs, when the Zarkith recount what happened here, they'll all remember who we are. The room stayed silent, but something passed between the officers, an unspoken understanding. Not pride, not glory, just clarity. They had proven something today, not just to the galaxy, to themselves. Smoke coiled through the corridors of the Dominion flagship like mist in a dying forest. Dim emergency lights flickered red across broken bulkheads. Half the bridge displays were dark, the rest frozen mid-error, silently pleading for systems no longer responsive. Supreme Strategos Karathzul stood rigid at the center, jaw locked, claws folded tightly behind his back. His obsidian command armor was scorched along one shoulder. He hadn't moved in 3 minutes, not since the Terran AI lanced through his systems and peeled away his last defenses like bark from rotwood. Around him, his bridge crew worked in whispers. Gone was the swagger, the Dominion arrogance. What remained were fractured voices and trembling hands, too disciplined to run, too afraid to speak. Karatha's second-in-command approached with halting steps. Strategos, we've lost all weapons control. Life support is functional. Barely. External scans show multiple Terran vessels holding position. No movement. Karath didn't respond. Not a sound. Not a twitch. The officer shifted. They're not destroying us. They could. Easily. Still silence. Inside Karatha's mind, a storm raged. He had faced rebellions, neutralized rogue fleets, and crushed insurrections in half a dozen systems. Every battle followed a shape. Threat, response, dominance. But this was shapeless. They hadn't just beaten him. They had unraveled his command. And they had done it without shouting. Without spectacle. He turned, finally, and stepped toward the cracked viewport. The Lyria expanse stretched before him, painted with drifting debris and Terran silhouettes. The enemy didn't approach. They watched, waiting, daring him to move. He pressed one clawed hand to the cold glass. You were right, he muttered to himself. They are not what we expected. Aboard the TSV Valiant, Commander Elena Voss stood in her ready room, hands at her sides, facing a live transmission link to Concord Central Command. On the display, Admiral Sandoval leaned in, expression taut. We've received partial word from the Concord Senate. They want an immediate status report. There are whispers of sending emissaries. They should, Elena replied. What happened here changes everything. You disabled one of the most feared Dominion fleets in known space, without loss. He paused. They're calling it unprecedented. Elena looked tired. Not physically, but in the soul-deep way soldiers look after walking a tightrope over fire. This wasn't a victory, she said quietly. It was a statement. Sandoval leaned back. A loud one. The line cut. Elena stepped out into the bridge. Status? She asked. Hale responded instantly. Dominion flagship still dead in the water. No reinforcements on scope. We're holding position. And the fleet. All ships fully operational. Revenant is cycling weapons. Nix reports no damage. We're stable. Good, Elena said. Transmit a final message to Karatha's ship. Audio only. No video. Short range. Hale gave a nod and opened the channel. Elena stepped forward, her voice calm and exact. Strategos Karath. You've seen what we are. You led a fleet into sovereign territory. You ignored a formal warning. You fired first. You lost. This was not vengeance. This was precision. We held back. Deliberately. If you come again, we will not. She cut the transmission. No reply came. Not immediately. Just the faint pulse of a drifting flagship with flickering lights. Then something odd. A signal, unarmed, tightband, reached the Valiant. No threats. No bluster. Just coordinates. A Dominion fallback point. A request to be towed? Elena blinked. He's not surrendering, she said aloud. He's conceding space. Silently. Hale frowned. That doesn't sound like him. No, she said. But silence is the only dignity he has left. She walked back to the central display.
The image of Caratha's vessel hovered like a ghost on the edge of the net.
She watched it for a long time before speaking again. "Deploy tug drones," she said. "Let him drift. Slowly. Let every Dominion sensor in the nearby systems pick up the signature of a beaten warship crawling home." A pause. "Then we vanish." 30 minutes later, the Terran fleet faded back into the expanse. Cloaks engaged. Engines cold. The black hulls dissolved into the stars, leaving only wreckage behind and a single drifting Leviathan, Caratha's flagship, now marked as a warning beacon in the Terran logs. On board, Carath sat alone in his private chamber, surrounded by the dying hum of half-functional systems. A replay hovered before him, grainy and raw, the moment the Terran AI disabled his sensors. The coordinated flanks. The surgical strikes. No chatter. No wasted movement. His crew had asked why she hadn't finished them. He hadn't answered. But deep down he knew. She didn't have to. They had already been erased. Not physically, but tactically, psychologically, doctrinally. Everything he believed about warfare had collapsed in 73 minutes. And worse, no one in the Dominion would believe it until they saw it for themselves. He tapped a command key. The ship's recorder blinked online.
Carath began to speak, not as a supreme strategos, not for the war machine, but as a warning.
They do not roar. They do not boast. They do not hesitate. They arrive. They dismantle. They leave. And you are left wondering if they were ever there at all. The TSV Valiant slipped into high orbit above Earth, its hull gleaming against the blue curve of home. The stars looked quieter now, as if even they had paused to listen.
Commander Elena Voss stood at the observation bay, arms at her sides, watching the sunrise arc over the Pacific.
It had been 6 days since the Lyri engagement. 6 days since humanity stepped out of the shadows and whispered a truth the galaxy could no longer ignore. She wasn't here for medals. She was here to breathe air that hadn't been filtered through carbon scrubbers.
The hiss of opening doors pulled her from thought.
"Commander," said Admiral Sandoval, stepping in without preamble. "You're expected in Geneva." "I know," she replied. "But I needed a moment." He joined her by the viewport. Concord's response was immediate. Dominion traffic has gone silent across 3 sectors. Multiple border fleets recalled. And I've personally received 7 discreet messages from empires that wouldn't have taken our calls last week. She didn't smile. "That's politics," she said. "No," Sandoval replied. "That's fear." He handed her a data pad. A projection flared to life. Footage from the Lyri expanse, stitched from battle logs. Dominion ships torn apart with eerie precision. The quiet movement of Terran vessels weaving through the debris. The way Caratha's flagship drifted. Scarred, powerless. And there, in the corner, a title freshly minted by the Concord Intelligence Committee. Operation Silence. The day humanity spoke without raising its voice. Elena's jaw clenched. "I didn't ask for theatrics." "No. But they need the myth," Sandoval said. "They need something to fill the vacuum we just created." She turned to him. "Is that what we are now? A myth?" "You proved that we're more than a curiosity," he said. "You gave them a story they'll be telling their children for 1,000 cycles." She looked back at Earth. "I didn't do it alone." "No one ever does," he said quietly. "But someone has to be the face they remember." Half a system away, in the dark hall of the Dominion's High Strategium, silence reigned. Holograms flickered above the war table, unfolding trajectories, casualty counts, sensor logs. Each one whispered the same uncomfortable truth. The Terrans had emerged, and they had done so with intent. The Supreme Circle had not yet spoken. Not until now. Carathzal stood alone in the chamber's center, stripped of rank insignia, his armor bearing the scars of failure. He didn't look down. He didn't beg. He didn't need to. He had brought something more powerful than victory. Proof. "This footage," said one of the elders, voice gravel and ice, "is not doctored?" "No, strategos," Carath said calmly. "You allowed your fleet to fall. I allowed them to survive." A murmur rippled through the chamber. "You speak as though that's a virtue." "No," Carath replied. "I speak as someone who knows what would have happened if I hadn't." He lifted a data crystal from his belt, offered it forward. They want you to think we were spared out of mercy. But this was calculus. Deliberate.
They didn't kill us because they didn't need to.
He took a breath. And that's worse. In Geneva, the Concord chamber filled with delegates. A dozen species sat shoulder to shoulder, scaled, feathered, furred, and synthetic. The room pulsed with nervous energy.
Terrans had long been considered a developing world, cordially ignored. Earth had a voice, but no weight.
That changed now. A new seat had been placed at the table. Admiral Sandoval sat beside Elena in the delegation box. She wore the dark, simple dress uniform of the Terran Vanguard. No medals. No rank displayed. Just a nameplate. Voss. The floor moderator cleared his throat. The council recognizes Commander Elena Voss of the Terran Vanguard. The floor is yours. She rose without hesitation. I didn't come here to threaten, she began. And I didn't come here to apologize for what we did in Lyri.
No one moved.
Humanity has watched this galaxy from the edge for a long time. We learned in silence. We advanced in silence. And when the time came, we acted in silence.
Her gaze moved from one delegate to the next.
We do not want war. But we will not be dismissed. Not again. She stepped back. No applause. No murmurs. Just quiet. A different kind of power. The kind that didn't demand acknowledgement, because it already had it. Later that evening, Elena stood on the balcony of her temporary quarters, overlooking Lake Geneva. Lights sparkled across the water.
Somewhere below, civilians moved on with their lives, unaware of how close history had come to bending violently.
Nyx's voice chimed softly in her earpiece. You altered the strategic balance of half the galaxy today.
That wasn't the goal, she said.
But it was the result. She didn't argue. A soft knock came at the door. She turned as Hale stepped inside, holding a small case.
You've been officially decorated, he said, offering the box. She didn't open it. Let it collect dust, she said.
This was never about medals.
He nodded.
The crew asked me to deliver this too. He handed her a second item, a hand-carved nameplate. Simple, elegant, engraved with a new title beneath her name. Elena Voss, Commander of the Silent Fleet. She traced the letters with one finger, then placed it gently on the table. Hale lingered a moment. What's next? She looked up at the stars beyond the window. We watch, she said. We listen. And if they come again? Her answer was quiet, final. Then we remind them.